There have been a number of pivotal moments in my life that have shaped who I am as a person and the purpose that I have within me to help people see the light that they have within themselves. And one moment, which I will never forget, and I tell this story quite often on stages and in my books and in my work, because it really created this shift in my life that changed the trajectory of my life forever. So I had come to Canada as a child bride in a forced marriage, and I did not have any autonomy, any agency, any freedom. The only place that I was allowed to go out of the house in those early years of my marriage, I was in my probably like 19 or 20, and I had a 1.5-year-old daughter. The only place that I was allowed to go was the nearby drop-in center in the neighborhood where mothers would take their kids and the kids would get involved in crafts and whatnot. And it was like once a week, 2 hours, it would be my escape time, my little breathing room from the constriction that I faced at home. And one day, as I was coming back from that drop-in center, my daughter started to ask for a donut. So I went to the Tim Hortons, I got in line, I ordered the donut, and I put my hand in my pocket to get the toonie that I found lying in the house the night before and put it in my pocket, and I could not find that toonie. And I turned my pockets inside out and my purse upside down. I could not find it. And I was so mortified. My hands were clammy. My face got red. I just wanted, a hole to open up and I would get swallowed. It was absolutely petrifying and mortifying. And then I heard a voice behind me. "Ma'am, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I buy your daughter a donut?" And I turned around, and there was this man who was a complete stranger looking at me with the kindest eyes, insisted on paying, and then walked out. And I walked out of the Tim Hortons and sat at the bench on the street. And in that moment, I felt so pathetic, so powerless. And just thinking, how will I ever make anything of myself and of my life if I can't even afford to buy a $2 donut for my daughter? However, that man's kindness shone through like a ray of hope in my otherwise dark world, that maybe there is goodness out there. Maybe there is kindness out there. Maybe the world is not a big bad place like everybody tells me. Maybe there will be people who will come to my aid, because this man did, with nothing expected in return. And that moment, even though it was tiny random act of kindness, inspired me to take action, the very first step in my life towards my freedom. That night I went home. And when I went home, I ordered my very first course through the Independent Learning Center. My very first high school course to eventually finish high school and then get into university years later. And then my journey started from there. But that moment, was such a pivotal moment in my life. And then another pivotal moment when I started to share my story was after I had left my marriage, and it was a very long journey, which I share about, in my first book. After I left my marriage, I knew by then, through counseling, through my own growth, that my story was not just my story. My story is the story of millions and millions of people around the world, from all walks of life, all genders, all socioeconomic statuses, all backgrounds, who are living with this feeling that they're not enough, that they don't belong. And I wanted to do my part to make a difference. I wanted to help people see the light that they have within themselves and shine it as bright as possible. So I knew that the first step is to break the silence, because silence never serves anyone except oppressors. Silence is the biggest ally of abuse. Silence is the biggest ally of oppression, and I wanted to do my part to break it. So I started to share the story with the hope that it may help someone, it may inspire someone. Maybe one person out there needs to hear what I have to say. And that became the start of my advocacy work. And I remember the very first time that my story got published was in a blog, and it went live on my convocation day in June 2013. So it was already a very emotional day for me. I finally get this degree that I'd been working for so hard for all these years. And I came home and I logged into my social media, and it was flooded with messages from all over the world, thanking me, congratulating me, telling me their own stories, that this resonated with me. I lost my job a year ago and I didn't know how to move forward, but now I'm going to go back to school and reinvent myself. Or my mother has been going through this, through oppression and abuse all her life, and now I finally understand her, and I'm going to help her and I'm going to support her. There were just so many beautiful messages. And one of those days where there's a quote that's attributed to Mark Twain, that the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why you were born. And that was certainly one of the days when I found my why. We have many different purposes and gifts and many different whys that we discover along the way of our life. But that day, I will never forget it. And I vowed to myself that this is just the beginning. And every day that I wake up, I feel it's just the beginning.